I've been struggling with art journaling for the past several weeks. I feel not particularly creative, very much overwhelmed, and also utterly self conscious. But whenever I put my art journaling on pause, I feel even more lost. So I had to find a new way with my creative slumber, and it worked. In today's video, I'll share with you two art journal concepts that are very easy and that keep my practice going in order to stay connected with the creative part of myself, even when life gets so messy and energy levels are at their lowest. In the middle of September, my husband and I moved countries. We left the Republic of Georgia, where we spent almost 2 years, and now are in Serbia. It's a beautiful country in Eastern Europe, in the Balkans, and there are so many things that we have to do to settle here. It's intense. Just a couple of days ago, we moved into this apartment, which is our new long-term stay in Serbia, and I don't feel at home here yet, so it's a process, but I won't go into too much details because I mention it only to create a context of why my life is a mess and why I have to reinvent my creative practice. So we are here to talk about art. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Anna, and I started this channel to share art journaling tips and inspirations, and also how I do my personal art practice for self-exploration. So here is the plan. First, I will share with you an art journal concept practice that I've come up with for especially low energy and uncreative days. It's very easy, but very satisfying and also meaningful. Second, I will show you my little ugly notebook for anything. At the moment, it's my most non-judgmental companion every day when I don't want to feel like I'm catastrophizing my life and the whole situation. So it's very therapeutic. And in the third part of the video, I will share some thoughts about why we all need a tiny creative action a day and what I mean by this action. There are timestamps down below, so you can navigate this video the way that you want it. One&One is an improvised name that I gave to this practice, and the concept behind it is very simple. First, you pick one object that you interacted or interact with on the given day, and then you draw it or paint it and just use any medium that you are comfortable with. And then you pick one piece of paper and turn it into a collage element or elements and just arrange everything on the page. And then, if you feel like it, you can add some observations or impressions that you've noticed inside or outside of yourself. I don't have a ton of entries to share with you, but just enough to demonstrate and show what I mean. And I needed simplicity. I needed very small room for my tiny creative act without any possibility to overthink, because I tend to overthink all the time, and I needed just restriction and simplicity and also no excessive, inner requirements, so to speak. I think you get what I mean. If you do any sort of creative practice, you know exactly what I mean. So here is the first entry that gave the direction to the whole concept. At first, I drew a lamp in a short-term rental where we stayed at that moment in Belgrade, and then I decided to utilize the ticket from Belgrade Botanical Garden. So I cut it into several pieces, and in the end I loved the pop of violet color. And I added a few impressions from the day, with me learning Serbian. Here it says ja sam, which means I am. I thought it was also sort of a grounding reminder. And here I wrote in my mother tongue, which is Russian, about fish in the pond and the bustling, wildish life in the botanical garden. The next entry has a jug that was in our short-term rental, and I decided to add this piece of paper napkin of a very bright neon color. The apartment was sort of a green and violet combo, and I added this observation here, saying that it felt like a Beatles elytra, those hard covers of the wings. I loved the idea of using paper elements that were directly related to my day, not just some random pieces. And in this next entry, I used a receipt from the supermarket. I wanted it to look like a stylized eye. And for the object that I've interacted with and that I decided to draw, I've chosen a chair from another short-term rental that we stayed in. I had troubles with fitting it in the page, so my feeling of space was off on that day. So I decided to make a fun composition with the top part on one page and the bottom part on another page. And one of the impressions that I've added is about the discomfort of this chair. Although it looked super stylish and fun, but it was a misery to use it for sitting. Lamps are such satisfying objects to draw, and I also enjoy writing my impressions very close to objects, using the outlines as the direction. In a way, these tricks makes the entry feel whole, as if words are part of the objects. And for the collage element, I used a piece of paper that I've just doodled on to create interesting textures and just relax my mind. And here it says panic and chaos. And it was pretty accurate at that very moment how I felt. The collaged elements here are from the paper that I painted watercolor on. Then I crumpled that paper, cut out small shapes, and then glued them into the sketchbook. It was sort of an art release again, through crumpling and cutting and switching off my inner critic and skeptic too. The object is a small purse that was a kind gift from my new acquaintance. It's fluffy and very fun, and one of the impressions that I wanted to remember is the thought that says, "The world speaks to me through an unimaginable series of events." Here in Serbia, I bought a set of gouache paints, my first ever gouache paints, to try, and this is their debut. It's not a real mug, I drew the shape of my actual mug, but the design is from my head. And the tea bag string is just too long to be real. So I just wanted maybe to make this entry real, but also surreal, to combine the outside world and the way that I was feeling. So this tea bag label here is from real actual life. It's the collaged element that I used, and it prompted the whole mug design situation. And one of my impressions here says, "This place has enough emptiness and silence." This practice is not over yet. I will continue it for sure, because what I've found here is a tiny comfort space where I can do a little creative action a day or on certain days in order to express myself and to also connect to the surroundings where I'm currently in, where I can, so to speak, plant myself and not feel like I'm a flying seed that is totally controlled by the wind, that I can choose myself, I can choose how I see myself, how I see the world and the little fragments of my daily life. It is very low effort, yet very satisfying and meaningful form of art journaling, at least for me, at this point of my life. Another small format for when life and the world feel just too big to wrap your head around. This is a long forgotten little notebook that my husband bought for me about 2 years ago when we were in Romania. In August, when I was consolidating all our stuff for moving countries, I discovered this and I saw that I've never used this little notebook, so I decided to turn it into a secret little ugly sketchbook for whatever that will never require any serious effort or, I don't know, extra thoughtfulness. I wanted to turn it into just a relaxing playground and a space where I can release some creative stuff. And so I doodled and I drew faces of people who I saw in the metro and what I saw in the streets, like this cypress, another person in the metro, another something seen in the street, stray dog, pigeon, man having a conversation, me having some wine in the evening, me having very disgusting coffee. This is the watermelon and the bag that is no longer with me, so it was a way for me to remember what I had at that moment. When we arrived to Serbia, I continued this very undemanding practice, which turned out to be perfect for stopping and just being in the moment instead of reading news on the phone or just worrying. And after the arrival, I haven't done a ton of sessions, but at least it's something, and I always carry this little notebook with me to be ready to do a tiny yet important creative action. And let's have a chat about it. When it comes to personal art practice, be it making full-featured artworks or doing urban sketching or keeping an art journal, it often feels big and serious and therefore more overwhelming than we'd like it to be. The specifics of art, of painting, drawing, collage in particular, is that it is result-oriented, whether we want it or not. Because in the end, we get a canvas, a page, a sheet of paper with something that we've put on it. And the fear that our idea and expectations won't fit what is already there is real. This fear is very real. And thus we can become afraid of this big creative action because it involves a lot of pressure and also responsibility. Even those of us who are very intentional with their art practice and who are very familiar with self-reflection, who are not afraid to explore themselves and their place in the world, are prone to this fear. And I am one of such persons. While on most days I can move on despite fear, on very messy and low energy and hectic days I can feel afraid to do a big creative action because I become self-conscious, I feel destabilized, I feel not balanced where I am at the moment. And this is where I have discovered that a tiny creative action can be just enough and no big ones are needed. A tiny creative action helps us recognize and acknowledge our inner artistic and psychological, emotional processes in a very personal and even intimate way. On certain days, even such a therapeutic activity as traditional journaling can feel overwhelming when you just cannot put down all your thoughts and experiences, what is going on. You just need to focus on something one. Sometimes on these days, all you need to do is to stare at a lamp, go make some tea, notice a lovely smiling lady on the train, and follow your attention as if you were in a cozy cabinet of curiosities where you can just be and you don't owe anything to anyone, including yourself. Where you can observe, put your impressions down if you want to, in any form, maybe just one word or no words at all, where you can use any materials that you want and that you like, and thus remember who you are. I hope that I don't sound too preachy or dramatic. I'm just genuinely excited and amazed by what discoveries we can make if we decide to take our art practice a little bit deeper and further, and at the same time have more fun and allow ourselves more experiments. And also, most importantly, respect what is going on in our life, how we feel and who we are, because art practice changes, art journaling also changes. There are different seasons in the world, there are different seasons of life, and we should notice it, pay attention to it, and be kind to ourselves. My tiny creative actions don't happen just here. For those, I also have my regular sketchbooks, and I have my commonplace slash journal, and I have my reading slash watching slash whatever experiences journal. I have quite a collection here and I use them all. I don't have a specific structure maybe yet, but when we moved countries, I had to declutter a lot of personal things, but I brought all these with me because this is what keeps me grounded and hopeful and excited about life. I hope you enjoyed the video and maybe got inspired to try the one-and-one concept, or keeping a tiny, ugly notebook for whatever. Please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, dear fellow creatives, and I'm wishing you a lovely day filled with inspiration, joy, quietness, solitude, beauty, whatever you want to choose today. And I will see you in the next video. Пока-пока!